Let's go get snowed in. Let's go get snowed in. How wrong could that be? Being snowed in somewhere, you and me.
Snowflakes danced from the sky, creating a picturesque winter wonderland around the secluded cabin that stood at the edge of a serene forest. The cabin, a rustic retreat nestled amidst tall pine trees, had been a part of their family for generations, a quiet haven in the wilderness. Tiffany gazed out of the frosted window as her husband, Mark, parked their car in front of the cozy cabin. "Mark, this place is absolutely beautiful," Tiffany exclaimed, her breath forming a cloud in the frigid air. She stepped out of the car and looked around in awe. The cabin exuded an old-world charm, with its wooden beams and a stone fireplace, which was now covered with dust and cobwebs. The place held a mystique that made Tiffany feel like she'd been transported to a different time. Mark, however, seemed indifferent. "Yeah, well, it's just a rundown old place. We're here to prepare it for sale, not to admire it," he grumbled, a cloud of annoyance hanging over him. Tiffany sighed. She knew that their relationship had been strained lately. They'd been married for 10 years, but it had been a challenging time. Mark had been the primary caregiver for his ailing mother, who had recently passed away, leaving both him and her emotionally and physically exhausted. Their dreams of having a family had also been shattered due to infertility issues, which added to their burden. As they entered the cabin, dust swirled in the air and cobwebs clung to forgotten corners. Tiffany began to see past the neglect and decay. She saw the potential for a warm and inviting space that they could call their own. "Mark, please, let's not be hasty about selling it. It's a piece of your family's history and it's stunning. We can clean it up, give it a fresh start." Mark frowned with his gaze fixed on the worn wooden floorboards. "Tiff, I just don't have the time or energy to maintain this place. I've got to focus on my job and my life now." The disappointment etched on Tiffany's face was palpable. "You always say that, Mark. It's always about what's practical and convenient. What about what's meaningful? What about our dreams?" Their argument escalated, with voices rising and harsh words exchanged. Hurt feelings flared, and they decided to spend the night in different rooms, barely able to stand being in the same space together. That night, as the bitter cold outside seeped into the cabin, Tiffany lay in the darkness, contemplating their fractured relationship. She had loved Mark for so long, but she felt like they were drifting apart, and this cabin had become a symbol of their differences. Would they ever find their way back to each other? Suddenly, the cabin shuddered, and the dim light in the room flickered and went out. Tiffany was alone in the pitch-black room, and she felt a twinge of fear. She wrapped herself in a blanket and ventured out into the hallway, where she found Mark with a flashlight, his face reflecting worry. "What happened?" Tiffany asked, trying to hide the fear in her voice. Mark explained. "It seems like the power went out, probably due to the snowstorm outside. I can't find any candles or matches." Tiffany realized that their predicament had brought them together, if only out of necessity. "I have some emergency supplies in our car. I'll get them." Her voice was resolute as she put on her coat and boots, determined to make the best of the situation. As she returned with a box of candles, lanterns, and an assortment of non-perishable food, Mark's expression softened. "You're always so prepared, Tiff. I really haven't been appreciative of you." The realization hit him hard that he had taken her for granted for so long. He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close, and kissed her forehead. "I'm sorry for being so stubborn about the cabin. You were right. It's special. And it's a part of us. Let's give it a second chance." Tiffany nodded, tears glistening in her eyes, feeling a glimmer of hope for their relationship. "I forgive you, Mark. Let's make this cabin ours, not just another property to sell." They spent the night huddled together by the fireplace, warming themselves by the fire and talking about their dreams and plans. The snowstorm raged outside, the wind howling through the trees, and the world beyond the cabin faded away. As they listened to the wind and watched the flames dance in the hearth, they rekindled the spark in their relationship. It was as if the snowstorm had blown away the resentments and the distance that had grown between them. In the days that followed, they cleaned, painted, and repaired the cabin. With each task they completed, they felt closer, rediscovering the joy of working together as a team. As they unearthed forgotten family treasures and shared stories from the past, the cabin became a place of healing and connection. By the time the snowstorm subsided, they had transformed the cabin into a cozy retreat. It was no longer just a symbol of the past, but a symbol of their shared dreams and their future together. They decided to keep the cabin and make it a yearly tradition to visit, rekindling their love each time. When they finally left the cabin and headed back home, the world outside was bathed in the soft light of Christmas Eve. As they drove, Tiffany felt a sense of contentment she hadn't experienced in a long time. Little did she know that a beautiful surprise awaited her. A few weeks later, Tiffany found out that she was pregnant. The news filled their hearts with an overwhelming joy that they had longed for, and it was the best Christmas gift they could have ever received. They were finally on the path to creating their own family, and the cabin, once a source of contention, was now a cherished part of their love story. In the end, the snowed-in experience at the cabin had not only brought them closer, but had also given them the most precious gift of all, the promise of a future filled with love, hope, and the pitter-patter of tiny feet, making their Christmas celebration that year more magical than ever.
The Christmas lights fill the city. There are people everywhere. The snow is falling white and pretty as I stroll Let's get snowed in somewhere, you and me.
Subscribe to hear more romantic bedtime stories that will sweep you off your feet.